each of you introduce yourselves, say who you are, why you're here, what your addiction problem is. That's kind of nice intro. And of course, I'm director of CleanTechnica, Zachary Shahan, and I love the i3.
Hey, I'm Kyle. Oh, sorry. I'm Kyle Field. I'm a senior editor at CleanTechnica, focused on electric cars, and also work as VP of Business Development. My addiction, I love Tesla and have some great affection for the BMW i3 and really have high hopes for it.
Great. My name is Afeez Alade-Kolawole, or you could just call me Afeez K. I'm the founder of Try My EV, Global EVRT, e-car test drives, and Tesla rentals. So, and I'm owner of a BMW i3. I love the i3. That's my addiction, and I feel that the i3 needs a lot more love than it's actually getting.
Hi, my name is José Pontes. I'm a partner of EV Volumes consulting company, and I'm also the author of the EV Sales blog. And my addiction is EVs since 2001. I've been addicted to EVs.
Yeah, we all have the EV addiction, and Afeez said he loves i3. I mean, the real reason we're having this webinar, frankly, I mean, we're having regular EV webinars, but I love the i3. I think it's an amazing vehicle, an awesome vehicle, and I think it has gotten really far too much unbalanced negativity in the press and generally than it deserves, and not nearly enough positive commentary or awareness. And a lot of the negativity, I think, comes from people who haven't experienced the car. So we wanted to talk a little bit more after Kyle and Jose just reviewed it on long-term reviews, and Afeez owns one. Talk a little bit more about the car. I'll just knock out a few common criticisms of the car that I think are legitimate, and just get them out of the way so we can talk about the fun stuff. But it's a subcompact, which I didn't even know this was a class until I found out it was a subcompact. So it's a very small car. It doesn't feel small in the front, I would say, at all. The back, the legroom could be, is not. It's a little smaller than I'm used to, but it's, even for someone my height, 6 foot, it works fine. I think I haven't tried it on a long trip, so I don't know. The trunk space I'm always concerned about, so I'm curious to ask Afeez more about this. But basically, it is a subcompact car, and that comes with downsides for some people, and that also comes with upsides that we'll talk about. The limited range, it's obviously what was a first generation EV that's with limited range. It's got a bit of a range boost, but it's still not a 200-mile EV. Of course, that's well known, and almost every EV out there is like that. So it's just something to definitely be aware of, and it's a legitimate criticism. Of course, it's above average price in the U.S., $42,000. It's not the cheapest car in the market. But those out of the way, let's find out what your favorite things about the i3 are. So if you can choose one, go for it. If you have to say a few, that's fine. I'm just curious what yours are, and then I'll probably change mine while I'm listening to you. But Kyle?
Yeah, for me, I really appreciate the focus on carbon fiber because of the efficiency improvements that it gives. And then what goes along with that is the safety. I mean, that life module core of the vehicle being extremely light and strong makes the vehicle very efficient, makes it very fun to drive. And I think that carbon core is really the center of a lot of the positive feelings and experiences I've had in the vehicle. So I really enjoy that. I appreciate how much they invested in that, and I think it really plays well across the BMW fleet as you look towards the future of electric vehicles and just scaling that even in their existing internal combustion vehicles.
Yeah, and the carbon fiber thing, that's something I think a lot of people have no idea about, is that it's so strong, extremely strong. And the i3 had the highest safety rating in Europe, actually, when the Model S didn't. I think the Model S has been updated now to get that. But it's actually, despite being a subcompact, is an extremely safe car by official standards. Yeah, Afeez?
For me, I will probably like to go with three things that I like instead of just one. Um, I live in London, in case most of you guys don't know. And London, in terms of driving in the city of London, a Tesla Model S or a car that size is kind of useless in a way. And so the size of the BMW i3 is the first thing that I really like about it. Um, it kind of reminds me of TARDIS in Doctor Who, in the sense that from the outside it looks small, but once you're actually inside, it's actually bigger than you think. So the size on the outside is small, whereas the inside is sufficiently, it's got a really good size. So the size, that's first thing. The second thing is the carbon fiber reinforced plastic. I think rightly pointed out by Kyle and yourself as well, is that most people don't really understand this. The fact of the matter is batteries are heavy, and that's the majority of EVs weight is to the battery. And what BMW have cleverly done is invested in the carbon fiber reinforced plastic or shell, and that has reduced the weight significantly. And then the third thing, the third thing on my list is the turning circle. Now, for you guys, I've not been to London. The London black cabs have, one of the good things about London black cabs is that they can literally turn. The turning circle is probably one of the best in the world. But my i3 here actually has a better turning circle than the London black cab. So for me, it's so maneuverable. It's quick, it's agile, and the turning circle is just amazing. So yeah, those are the things that I like about it. I think that's probably more than three. So, yeah, there you go.
I think as as an owner, you definitely get to choose more than three. Yeah. Jose?
One of the things I love about the i3 is the design of it, because it's very rare the opportunity for a designer to have a clean sheet and just do a car without any links to any other model. And that's one of the things I like on the i3. I'm not a BMW guy. I think Audis and BMWs are really boring, just like Mercedes, because basically it's the same sausage, but with different sizes. The Audi A4 is more or less like the Audi A6, which is more or less like the Audi A8. You just pick the size of the sausage. With the i3, it's a completely different thing. It's different from any BMW out there, and it's different from anything out there. So it's very color sensitive, yes. Some colors are great, some colors are not that great, but it's something that it's very rare to find these days. A car that has character, that's different from anything else.
Yeah, and I would say, I think all four of us are in this group where we like something that's new and creative and interesting and unique. And there's, the world seems to be divided by people who like this kind of new, creative design, and people who just want something that looks normal, right? And I think some of us might have wives who are in that boat, just want something that looks normal. I think probably I am, but. So the i3 gets, I think, criticized a bit for the looks because it looks so much different from other BMWs. But for me, and I think for a lot of people on the street, from what I've read from Jose and others, that's actually a benefit. It catches the eye. It's really attractive, and it gets criticized a lot for looking bad. And I was saying before the call, I think this is something that's unique more to, I think, the internet. I think a lot of pictures of it don't make it look not very good. But every time I see one in real life, I think it looks beautiful. It looks stunning. It's really an eye catcher. But anyway, my favorite thing about the i3, I have to say, is just the acceleration. I have several things I love about it, but it's so much fun. I mean, I know it's not a Model S. We did like test drives with 50 people or something yesterday in our Model S 85D, so 4.4 seconds to 60, and it was a lot of fun. It was crazy, but the i3 has a different kind of awesome acceleration that I won't even say is worse, because I think the car is so small and so light, and the visibility is so superb that you fly off the line, and it's just so much freaking fun. So I think I have more fun with it in the city, especially city acceleration. You know, not on the highway necessarily. I don't know so much about that, but I haven't tried it there so much. But I think it might be the most fun car to drive in the city. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah. But I mean,
I'll
yeah.
let
So
Afeez
just
chime in.
yeah. So if I can just jump in there, and I kind of second that, because a lot of people talk about the acceleration of a Tesla and 2.3 seconds, and you just need to really think about, when you are, the most city dwellers don't need that amount of power. You need usable power, and I think the i3 gives you just enough, probably a little bit more. Especially when you're going from 0 to 30 miles an hour, which is basically, the speed limit in most inner cities. And I think it's enough.
And I have no idea what the 0 to 30, and nobody ever looks at 0 to 30 times or shares them. But there's something about the i3 that just feels so quick, because it's this light car, and because you're seated right up there at the front more. It's, the Model S, you're seated back more. You're more like this is a boat, or sort of like the cruiser bicycle. It's sort of like that kind of. But I'll say, regarding this benefit, I drove the i3 right after driving. I mean, I've driven it a few times, but last time was right after driving a Model S and right before driving an i8. And I mean, like right before the BMW i8, which is significantly quicker. And I was shocked when I was driving the i8, because I thought, whoa, the i3 felt quicker than the i8, even though I know it's not at all quicker, because you just had this quick burst, full torque. Of course, the i8 pauses for a moment to give you the second burst. But it's that light feeling, and I think the seating position. So let's jump into the seating position. You guys, we can start with Afeez, because you know it very well. And then Kyle and Jose, luckily, have been in the i3 recently for a week at a time each, I think. So what do you say about
the seating position?
Yeah, about how it feels as a driver or front seat passenger? Like, what are the pros and cons there?
All right. Well, in terms of the pros and cons, one thing I definitely like about the sitting position is that, as I said before, I do most of my driving in the city, and having an upright position helps me see a lot better. The visibility is amazing, and because I actually have, I'm not sure what you guys call it in the US, but I'm not sure. Can you see my seat? So I have the mixture of the leather and the cloth.
You have the best options. Jose and I agreed when we were in Berlin recently. You got the best one, right? Yeah.
And one of the things that people always say when they step in, into my i3. And listen, one more thing that I need to tell you guys is that, and I'm sure, obviously, Jose knows about this as well, that I've been in a Tesla Model S lots of times, and I've driven people around in Model S. I've done thousands of miles in the Model S and an X. But whenever my girlfriend gets in the car, she always says, you know what? I think the fit and finish in an i3 might actually be better than in the Model S. I don't know what it is, but everyone always says, especially when you have this wooden finish. Can you see that?
I love the eucalyptus trim. That's
it's just amazing. I think it's you can't just focus on just the sitting position. I think it's the entire package. Once you're in the car, the steering wheel is just the size as well. It's not too thick. It's not too large. The sitting position gives you a lot of space in front. You can see better, and it's also good for your back as well. So yeah, to me, I don't see any negative with the sitting position in the i3.
And I remember Jose made some comments that I agree with in your review of it. So I'll pass it on to Jose for this, for what it feels like there in the driver's seat or passenger seat.
Yeah, one of the things I liked was the amount of space in front of you. You have the windshield that's really big. You have a lot of visibility ahead, and the car feels very airy. You don't feel a lot of metal around you. And that's, for example, one difference regarding the Model S and other cars, that you feel like you're in a tank, while in the i3 you feel that you're part of the landscape.
And I think you mentioned, and maybe I'm wrong, but I think you mentioned it has sort of a CUV kind of feel, even though it's a subcompact.
Yeah, because you sit a little bit higher than an average car. You feel a little bit like a CUV.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. We were actually comparing the i3 to the Mercedes B-Class back in 2014 when we were looking to buy. And they are, from a height standpoint, they're about the same height. And so they do ride very similarly. And I would kind of almost put the B-Class into that CUV category, even though it's even a little small. But I do like that about the i3. I mean, I think from a driver's seating position specifically, it is very attractive. I do like that kind of that airy, open feeling to it, and how you are more connected because of the windows and the seating. But I think once you stretch beyond that driving experience for the driver, I think the rear seat, the navigation, the controls, and it really, there are some gaps in that area. But I know we're going to dig into that in a little bit farther ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, and the thing is, it seems like everyone these days wants a CUV or an SUV. But the CUV trend is huge around the world, China, US, Europe. And I mean, much of it is just about that seating position, what it feels like when you sit. Do you feel a little higher up? Do you feel like you see the road better? And the i3, like I said, even though it's a subcompact, and you look at it from the outside, you wouldn't expect this. You get in it and you feel this, you feel a little higher. You feel like, I don't know, maybe not like a helicopter, but that's what I keep thinking of. You have this just tremendous visibility. My mom has a Leaf, and she loves the visibility of the Leaf, but the i3, in her, in my opinion, it has the best visibility out there that we've experienced. It's just, you feel like you can see everything really well. You have, it's small, but you feel like you have space. You feel like you have a lot of space. It feels very airy, as you say. So I love that. And I mean, the Model S too. I mean, the Model S has, you get in and it's like, oh, there's a lot of space, because if you don't have the EV NX console put in yet, which is, we're about to put it in. And people highlight this, but as you said, it's more of a traditional car feel. You sit in and you're more like closed box. In the i3, you get in and you feel like you've just risen up to the sky a little bit. I don't know. So I think that's just an amazing thing that you can't really. It's hard to put a dollar figure on. It's hard to say how valuable that is. I mean, I think as a user, I'll ask Afeez to chime in again. I would think that this is the kind of thing where day to day you're like, man, this is great, and you feel great about the car every day because of this, and that's a high value. And so people who say it's not a $42,000 car, or it should be priced like a Zoe, I'm like, have you driven a Zoe and an i3? Because they're a bit different, once you get inside. And like you said, the interior is amazing. I think everybody, you see a lot of people complaining about the exterior, but the interior gets, I have never really seen it get much criticism. I've seen it get a lot of love, because it's really a superb interior, especially if you choose eucalyptus. But Afeez, the day to day, how does that boost your life or not every day?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the day to day, I mean, I'll give an example. So from Monday to Friday, I don't do more than 20 miles a day. So obviously, I drive to the office, run some errands. And it's, getting into the car is one of the most easiest thing, one of the most easiest part of using the car is that, you're having some sports car or even some normal, cars, and some of them requires you to kind of bend your knee a little bit. I mean, I'm not tall, as you know, but I'm sure for someone like you, that would definitely, hurt your knee. But it's so easy getting in and out of the i3, and I think that they've got the right height just right, if you know what I mean. It's not too high and it's not low. It's just right. And today, for example, so in the morning I went to play football or soccer, if you're in the US, and after playing for about an hour and a half, I'm tired, but one thing that I noticed is that whenever I finish playing football, doing sort of sports, getting in the car, I don't have to strain myself. You know what I mean? I mean, it's one of those things that it's those little things that really make a car a great car. not just it's an
Yeah.
okay car. It's those
Now,
little.
that's
thought-
really interesting. I think anyone who's done sports much, you know that feeling when you're
I'm just
exhausted
tired.
and wrecked, and you try to get in the car, and you're like, oh fuck, I can't
Oh.
get in the car. And the i3, yeah, the i3 it's
Yeah.
like you said, these little things, and I think you can you can sort of get a sense of this when you test drive an i3, but it must be the kind of thing where you just you realize these benefits more and more as you live with it. Yeah. And I'll just emphasize, this is not sponsored. People criticize, people claim, claim sometimes, this is a legitimate issue we have where people think that CleanTechnica is running like a stealth sponsored post or something. If we like something a lot, we write about it or we cover it. We're in a lucky position of we get to write and talk about stuff that we're excited about. So sometimes we get really excited about stuff and people think we're like doing a commercial. This is not, we're doing this because it's fun. But so the entry, and I think as a passenger too, even more so as a passenger in the front seat, you have this amazing visibility and open feeling. And my sister, my mom, we all loved it.
Can you see over there?
Yeah, we can see really well.
Yeah, it's literally. The panels over here are well hidden, so they don't really block your point of view, especially when you turn into the left or to the right or turning off the road. The windscreen here is large. The design is very simple. In some ways, and I'm going to be quite controversial here, yeah.
Yeah, do it.
Looking at this design, this floating screen here, can you see it?
Yep. We can see really well.
Does that remind you of a Tesla Model 3?
Here we go.
I'm not saying that someone copied anybody, but it just seems like when they designed the BMW i3, they put a lot of thought into it. And initially when the car first came out, to be fair, I wasn't even convinced. I laughed at it. I thought, why are those wheels so thin? Why does it look so funny?
Yeah, I would say the thin wheels are the one thing. I wish they were thicker. They would look better. They wouldn't be as efficient, but they would look.
Yeah, no, they won't be as efficient. Yeah, but yeah, for me, the day-to-day use and the usability of the car is what makes it, stand out for me. Is what makes me always want to drive my car. So normally I like to run a lot. I like to, jog to the shops. But whenever I get any excuse to drive, I will drive. and that is when you have a great car, So so that's what I got to say.
Yeah, no, we had one of these when we were discussing the Model 3 navigation. This has obviously been a hot topic. I remember some commenters saying that Tesla copied BMW, the BMW i3. I'm not going to make any such claim, of course, but I think it's a lot of people think Tesla's doing everything right and they're trying hard to do everything as good as possible, and so obviously the i3 navigation hasn't got nearly the time that the Model 3 navigation has gotten on the interwebs, but I think that Tesla is choosing that similar kind of thing for the Model 3 is a sign that BMW was trying to do a cool thing and did a cool thing, and I think it's neat. It looks very futuristic. I like it more than almost any navigation out there to look at, not to use. The navigation using the navigation. As anyone knows who's used a BMW navigation, it's just like any other BMW navigation. Man, get to the 1990s at least, or the 20. I don't know. It's just it's not cool. I hope they have a big overhaul of their navigation plan, but
they need to.
But I don't know. Jose, Kyle, anything else on the front? And I love also the steering wheel. Like you said, you have to experience it. The steering wheel is I think the best out there. I love the BMW i3 steering wheel. It's just awesome to hold and drive. But so I don't know. Maybe we'll jump into the back seat. What are you guys' thoughts on the back seat?
One interesting thing was that during the long-term review, there were 4 people in the car, and one of the people that was in the back seat measured 1.90 meters. I don't know how much that is in foot. over 6 foot?
I will check quickly. Yes, I will check. I will quickly check, but I can tell you it's very high, very tall.
And I was afraid that he would be uncomfortable in the back seat. And then I asked him, so do you feel okay in the back seat? Oh yeah, it has plenty of height for me.
Wow.
It is the problem he has.
It's a little more than 6'2", a little more than 6 feet 2 inches.
Yeah.
Okay, so someone with 6'2" can fit on the back seat of an i3 in height. In regarding foot space, more or less, but it's a very tall person for a small car, and it fits. Something that larger cars can't do the same.
Yeah, I think for the rear seat, for us, we have 2 kids, so we're a family of 4, and I think the split doors make the rear seat a little bit less usable, specifically in a garage or a parking situation, where you open, the front door, you open the back door, and then if you're next to a car, which in our garage, that's the setup on both sides, you've got the car on one side and then shelves on the other. You effectively trap all the passengers between the doors. So
Yeah.
we would get out and we'd have to do this dance where I would open my door, open the back door, the kids would get out, they would come to the front, we'd close the back, they'd go out the back, and then, so I think from a usability standpoint, the cup holders in the middle, which you lose the middle seat, and then the funny suicide door dance makes it a little bit less usable if that's your everyday use case for it, is for the family of 4. But I think, again, I mean, getting back to the city car mindset, it's a perfect city car. So don't take that in any way that it's bashing the functionality of the car. I think, like Jose said, it seats 4 very comfortably for the size of the vehicle it is, for the footprint. I think that criticism, though, it just creates these funny situations where you probably get to know the people in the back seat better. You have to do these funny dances as you exit. So maybe that's a good thing.
Afeez, do you have much experience with the back seat, or you don't use it much?
Oh no, I have. There was one time when well, for someone that's not so tall, I happen to, for some reason, have a lot of tall friends. And I had a friend of mine in front of the car, sitting in the front seat, and he's about 6'4", 6'4.5", and then another friend is 6'2", and they were both fine. We're going out to central London, at the end of the long week, and I thought, you know what, guys, let's go to a bar somewhere. And they was, oh, yeah, can your car fit? I was like, yeah, just jump in. And they jumped in. I was like, wow, there's a lot of space here. So I can definitely attest and can confirm that a 6'4" person and a 6'2" can sit in the front and at the back over there, and they will be fine.
So just for Europeans, so 6'2" and 6'4", that's 190 centimeters and 193,
That's
193 centimeters. Tall people.
Yeah, that's tall. So the guy in front was 6'4", so obviously he pushed the seat a little bit backwards. But the guy at the back was about 6'1.5", 6'2", and he said, "Yeah, that's fine." I mean, it wasn't like sitting at the back of a Rolls Royce. So don't, but it was good. Yeah.
I don't know if I could give up my Rolls Royce, actually. But, yeah. I mean my Rolls Royce with a chauffeur. Anyway, but, well, I've been very curious of the back seat because on a short-term test drive, which I've had a few of, you can only check a little bit. And when I sat in the back, I'm 6'1" approximately, or I mean, it was good. I mean, it was surprisingly like, oh, hey, there's space back here. It's fine. But normally the preferred angle is to have your knee, 90 degrees, your knees, or a little more relaxed. And my knees were like up a little bit, which is not like the most ideal position. I mean, it wasn't like. I wondered if it would be an issue on a longer trip or not. I really couldn't tell. It was fine, but it wasn't like, it wasn't my Rolls Royce, of course. But I mean, even the Model S for a taller person, like the Model S in the back seat is actually maybe a bigger problem, I would say, because I can't sit up straight because I have a longer torso than legs, maybe, I don't know. But if I sit up fully straight the way I'm comfortable, my head is on the ceiling and getting pushed. So it's not. I I mean, I don't know. Yeah, the best electric car for the backseat, maybe the Leaf. It's quite nice.
Right.
Or the model.
Yeah.
Well, for sure, the Model X is amazing. But yeah, no, so you haven't really had any problems, and
No,
I mean,
no, I haven't had, and I've not actually. If anything, I get a lot of compliment in terms of, wow, for such a small car, it's quite spacious, and it's always
yeah.
consistent, and that's what they always say, and even for people sitting at the back. Um,
And
one
that
thing that
reminded me, because it's not, the visibility in the front is amazing for the front, but it does spread to the back, where the back seat people also have
yeah,
more visibility and space, which is a pretty big benefit in the back seat. Yeah.
yeah, and do you know why? Because if you look at the window at the back, it's lower for a reason, so that it allows more light into the back as well. So again, talking, I think the guys that designed i3 might not have recognized it, earlier, about 2-3 years ago when the car first came out, but living with the i3 has definitely made me think that a lot of the design cues in the car has been thought of, and that's why I think I really appreciate it. But one thing that I would say that I don't like about the i3 is that there is no armrest, and I would have loved if there was like a little small armrest that you can just pull down to cover that cup holders, so people can actually just put their hands and rest it on there and just relax a bit more. Apart from that, it's really it's okay. I mean, I don't normally sit at the back there, so I don't really care about the guys at the back.
Yeah, that's one of the ones that drives me crazy when I see comments that BMW tried to do a bad job with it. And I think I don't know, if you've experienced it, I think you can't really believe that. I don't know. I think they, like you said, they seem to have focused on so many elements in such a very focused way. And of course, they tried stuff that they haven't tried elsewhere. They pushed boundaries to explore things, for not just electric cars, but I think any other cars in their range, which some people like and some don't. But there's so much attention to what actually works, I think, which I don't think I've talked to an i3 owner or even driver who didn't really love the car. But so a couple more things. Let's talk about the navigation. I'm curious. Do you have a workaround for the navigation, or you just got used to it and now you're fine with it? Jose and Kyle as well. How did you manage with it for a week? Did you learn the quote system, if you can call it that? Or no, sorry. And I mean, the first time I drove a BMW, I rented a BMW, and I was like, "What the hell is this?" It's just it's BMW's thing. But
yeah, I can tell you that prior to the BMW i3, I had a Nissan Leaf loaner, and it was like an instant thing working with the navigation system in the Leaf. It was like half an hour. I was working like a pro. With the BMW i3, it took like 1 day or 2 days to figure out how that worked in the same way that the Nissan Leaf.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, I mean, just it's more of it's not so much just the navigation, it's the usability. So the entire user interface with that infotainment system is, like you said, Zach, I mean, it needs to get into the current decade. I mean, any free phone you can get at the store will have more capability than that vehicle. And it's just not acceptable in a vehicle at that price range with that technological kind of foundation with that market. I mean, you're looking at people who are tech savvy for that vehicle, people who are looking towards the future, and to put a system like that in it that doesn't match that standard, it's really just a disservice to the brand.
How much of a shock was it for you coming from a Model S? Like, was it like?
Yeah, that's taking the pinnacle of navigation experience and integration to kind of the bottom. I mean, it's not the bottom. It looks beautiful in the BMW i3. It does work. It just takes effort. But the Model S is the opposite. It's extremely intuitive. You push a button and you say things that it probably shouldn't understand. I've navigated to Japanese restaurants in LA, and it nails it. I know I'm butchering the name, and it gets it correct. So I mean,
but that's why it gets it correct, because you're talking like a Californian. But,
right.
And I mean, there's no smart Spotify, there's no smart navigation, which I just did a long article on CleanTechnica a week or so ago. There's there's the backup camera is decent though, right? Or
Oh yeah, it is. It is. I think. I mean, again,
And just run it quickly. So Kyle, you switched to using a smartphone for navigation.
Yeah, well, the one I had the smaller screen. It's literally smaller than my phone. So
Oh,
I mean, and you're putting it up in the front, so it's another foot away. And so for me,
okay.
it was almost mocking me. I mean, like I could buy a tablet and put it up there and have it be more functional, even having to reach out and interface with it. So the
And
phone
Jose,
just made way more sense.
and
Yeah.
Jose, you just used it, yeah.
Yeah, I use it, but the Nissan Leaf, which is a couple of $1,000 cheaper, has a better system than the BMW, which is a bit odd.
Yeah.
Afeez, what's your deal?
Okay. All right. The good point. Well, one good point I like about the navigation is, if you can see over here, I have the bigger
Yeah.
navigation. Yeah, so I have a much wider screen. It's a lot more cleaner. One thing I do like about it here is that, the navigation is well, in terms of the maps, is nice. I think it's quite detailed in terms of getting you from point A to point B. What I don't like about it is that when you actually need to type a destination input, you can, you basically have to use this rotary kind of, it looks like one of those rotary phones, the old legacy.
Yeah,
You have to
that's a
go like
great
that.
analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to kind of like, rotate. I mean, you can still use. I mean, you can type it, but I don't think it's that, comparable to modern informal imagination. So
Yeah, and so I mean, to clarify, this is a standard BMW system that's in it's in BMW cars of all types, and yeah.
hold on 1 minute. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I think I lost you there for a minute. Yeah, so that is the only good point in terms of the navigation, well, or more like this, rather. Oh, sorry.
We're gonna learn his playlist.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of negative, it's basically everything that Carla said. Really, it's not intuitive. I feel like it's from a different decade. Really, the colors are not that bright. It's not inviting. It's dark blue. I'm not sure why they dark blues for it. Yeah, I think if there's one, or at least one or two top things I don't like about the i3 is the navigation
So
software.
before we jump into
Yeah, I think that needs to be improved big time, massively.
before we jump into the next thing, so the question sort of I've just put straight at Afeez, but Kyle, Jose, you can chime in too. The trade-off of this beautiful, open, airy interior, the superb interior in all other ways, versus the sort of lame navigation. How much does that, when you think about the Model 3 coming, how much do you see that as a net positive? That overall experience as a net positive or net negative for the i3 versus what we expect from the Model 3. Do you think you'd still rather sit in the i3 or?
Okay, so I think that's quite tough, and I'll tell you why it is tough, because
I'm asking you a selfish question because I really want, I want to know, like, what would I really like more on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so I've never driven a Tesla Model 3 before, so it would be quite unfair to just judge a car just by looking at magazines and videos. But if I was to imagine how a Tesla Model 3 is, one thing I do like about a Tesla Model 3 is the simplicity and almost a Spartan design interior about the Model 3. I think it's a great design. Interior-wise, I like it. Obviously, because it's very similar to what I'm used to. I don't like cluster. I want things to be functional and to just work, to just do what it's supposed to do. One thing I would say that I will probably might not get used to quickly with the Tesla Model 3 is the lack of instrument, the speedometer right here. But if I was to really answer your question, I think that the i3 needs to drop down in price to really justify the reason why people need to buy it now, because the Tesla Model 3 is now coming to the market with I'm guessing probably about 230, 240, 260 miles of range. It has the design that I like. So it definitely has some of the design cues that I love about my i3. It's also in the Tesla Model 3 as well.
Yeah,
Obviously,
and
those can be
we'll do one more thing, and then we'll get into like a real sort of overall comparison of the Model 3 and i3. I'm just thinking like, how how you talked early on about how you loved the feel of getting in the i3 after some.
yeah.
I mean, do you think the Model 3 is gonna be a little better, a little? I mean, of course, based on your thousands of miles with the Model S and your what you've seen of the Model 3, not from any real world experience with the Model 3 yet, but do you feel like you're gonna if you went from an i3 to Model 3 next month, do you think you'd end up feeling like, man, I wish I was sitting in my i3?
I don't know. I mean, the fair answer is I don't know. I think so. I'm so used to the i3 right now that going into a normal saloon, as we call it over here, might be a bit of a a change for me because I'm so used to that upright position. I need the car for city. I live in London, so if I am going to drive, it's going to be in London. Or if I need to pop down real quick to maybe somewhere outskirts London, maybe or maybe somewhere to like Richmond, for example, or maybe to drive to Bristol or to Oxford or Cambridge. If I need to go to Scotland, I'll just get a train. So, yeah, I think it will be a bit of a shock for me. I'm looking forward more to the Tesla Model Y, which I believe is more going to be the upright version of the Tesla Model 3.
Yeah, everybody seems to be saying this, which is which is like, man, it's scary. If there were like almost 400,000 reservations for the Model 3, and everybody's waiting for the Model Y, what is that going to mean? But okay, well, quickly on. Yep.
Sorry, I think a better comparison will be the BMW i3 to the Chevy Bolt. I think that will be a better comparison because they have, both cars are, they do sit the passengers and the drivers upright. I think that if you were to compare those two, I will still go for the i3 because I like my cars to have a certain look about them, certain feel. And from what I've read about the Bolt, the interior might not be of a higher quality to the BMW i3.
Yeah,
however,
with Bolt buyers, or people who prefer the Bolt, often the point is that sort of higher seating position and hatchback design, the storage, but the interior is like Chevy, not BMW, right? And not i3, which is even another level for. But with the storage, so the storage was, I think, my number one, or range concern with the i3. The trunk looks really small. All three of you, I'm sure Kyle and Jose tested the trunk space quite a bit with a couple of with Kyle having some kids and Jose having several people on the trip. What is it? Is it better than it looks, or is it really a big constraint?
I think if you're really going to move stuff around, I don't think it would be an issue. I actually laid down the back seats, which they do lay down, and filled it with a bunch of boxes and packed it full. So I did put it to quite good use. And I found it to be very functional. I think it's just separating kind of, if you are going to pack the car full of people and stuff, that's clearly not the right car, and that's not going to work out too well for you. But if you do just need to move across town, you need to help somebody move a couch or a small couch perhaps, or just some boxes, I think it's extremely functional. I mean, it does have
compact couch, right?
Right. Well, I moved a full couch in my Tesla, but I think that's a whole nother story. I'm one of those ones that pushes the limits, but I think you can pack it full of gear if you want to, and it is very functional in that sense as well. Jose, what do you think?
One of the interesting aspects I found about the trunk of the BMW i3 is the frunk. The little frunk they have in the front of the i3, it allows you to put the cables and a couple more stuff. That way you have access to the full width of the trunk of the BMW i3, something that you can't have, for example, on a Nissan Leaf, where you have a little space for cables, etc., which is not fully functional. So that's a neat feature that I found on the BMW i3 is that you can use the full space just for stuff, and if you find it not enough, you just lay down the back seats and you have a big space to fill.
Hmm. Yeah, but still, Jose, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
I I mean, everybody obviously liked the i3 and the design, but I think that that was always going to be the case anyway in terms of the trunk space. You know, when you try to create a city car, you always lose something, and I think that they have to sacrifice the trunk space for that. However, if you do put down the back seat, I have been to the airport to pick up, you know, family members from the airport with big luggages coming from, you know, from the UAE and also from Africa, and it was fine. Like literally, once you put down the two back seat, you can literally put quite a lot there. But of course, if you have four passengers sitting in the car, then that's not possible. So I only use the i3 if I need to go shopping, if I need to go to the store, if I need to go buy some, you know, some cornflakes, milk, you know, some things in the house, just put it at the back. That is it.
Yeah.
Anything more than that, then it's just useless to be fair.
And we don't really know what the Model 3 trunk is like yet, of course. But I did all these comparisons with popular BMW, Audi, Lexus models, etc. And the trunk space is supposed to be 14 cubic feet, which is comparable to many of these models. I forget the details, but you can check those articles. It was even a little more than like the BMW 3 Series or Audi A4 or something. But I assume that was, you know, the front, the trunk was probably the same, and then they had the trunk as well.
Yeah.
But yeah. So anyway, well, let's talk one more thing regarding the i3, and then let's give our full overview takes on the i3 versus the Model 3 in various regards. It's, I think, really interesting. But the big one of the big benefits of the i3 that we haven't talked about is the driving. You know, well, Afeez talked about a little bit, but it's just this like sort of like race cart kind of feel where it's small
Quite,
and you can
and
just
quite, yeah, it's very very responsive.
yeah, it's so responsive. You can dart around things. The turning radius. I loved when I was shocked and loved to hear that Afeez said that one of the things that sold him on the i3 was he watched our review video of it a couple of years ago, where where my sister and I were really enthusiastic about the amazing turning radius, about how easy it was to turn, and you know, if you're living in a big city. You know, this is a huge plus, right? So, so this is what I love. This is one of the features of the i3 I absolutely love, and what, you know, every day driving the Model S in a city, I think, oh man, I wish I had the i3 here. You know, like like it would be so much nicer in some situations. So I think that's a benefit of the i3 and of the i3 being small. So, you know, it's José really pointed out well, it's hard for us to justify paying more for something smaller, but that small feature is just amazing with the i3, and I love it, and it makes me think, like, practically every day I think the i3 is the best city car out there. But yeah, José, Kyle, Afeez, we'll leave Afeez last since I like leaving him last since he's got the most experience and
All right.
so stuff out. José?
Yeah. One of the things I found funny was that my long-term review was around 5 states across the US, but the place I loved most of the i3 was in the city of New York, because it blew everyone away. In stoplights, I was already on the other side when the other guys were starting to get off the pace, you know? So yeah, it was great. I could
and
turn.
the Model S at a stoplight, you can jet in front, right? But you have to get its big, long, fat ass in front of the other car. The i3, you have nothing back there, right? So you just dart in front and cut over. You don't have to worry about cutting off the back end. Anyway, keep going.
It's like a go-kart, you know? You're going with the go-kart that has 170 horsepower, which is more than enough to do everything you want in the city. Because Tesla, for example, yeah, it has like 500 horsepower, but you can only use the 500 horsepower in the highway because streets end fast when you have 500 horsepower. So with 170 in a city like New York, it's more than enough, and it's agile, it's light. It feels like a cart, you know?
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's really optimized for the city, and I think it does deliver on that in spades. I mean, even the limited range, or as we're calling limited range, the 114 miles or 85-mile range, depending on which version you're looking at, that's not really a limitation in the city. Where like Afeez, I mean, your average driving is 20 miles. That's not anywhere near where the limit. And so I think in Europe, where you have great interconnectivity between cities with trains, and you've got great mass transit options. You don't need something that goes beyond your city. I mean, you can commute from your home to your work and to groceries. And
or
I think
maybe you have a Tesla shuttle that you can get city to city and a passenger as a passenger in a Tesla shuttle. But anyway, yeah, just had to jump in with that one.
Yeah. I mean, I think it just speaks to the great public infrastructure and private infrastructure in that case with the Tesla shuttle. In Europe, and we just don't have that in the U.S., where things are a lot more spread out, and to a similar extent, Canada, but where it is a lot more of a requirement, not an option or something that would be nice to have, but it's a requirement to have a vehicle that can go 200 plus miles for not so much day to day, but guaranteed week to week. I mean, where you need to go down to see your in-laws, or you need to go to another city to pick somebody up. I mean, it's just the life is much more spread out. Things are much farther apart. And so I think the i3, speaking to that point, it really is custom built for city situations, and it delivers beautifully on that with few exceptions. Another one I'll just jam in is autonomous driving, but we can get to that.
Yeah, and I mean, for most of us, the driving we mostly do is in the city, which is why I think it's again unbalanced how much the attention is maybe on road trips when you just sort of ignore these city benefits that are much more regular and bigger impact on your life. So anyway, José, Afeez, more on this. But okay. you have Tesloop, of course, which was one of the triggers for our Tesla shuttle business. But it's of course, like us, just a certain region.
Yeah. On an ideal world, I would like to have the Tesla for the weekend, but the BMW i3 for the week and for commuting, because I wouldn't imagine to have a Tesla running around Lisbon City. Narrow streets, a lot of traffic. With a Tesla, it would feel like a yacht in a small river, it wouldn't fit there. So the i3 there fits perfectly. It's agile, easy to park, great turning circle. It feels right at home.
But are you going to give up? Are you going to give up your Rolls Royce with the chauffeur, or what is? What is that on Mondays? Maybe.
Maybe I would rent it.
Okay, yeah, it's a good idea. Afeez, what do you say? You obviously chose the i3 because of this.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, I mean, why did I choose the i3? Okay, so I would like to kind of divide this into different sections. So I'll tell you why I went for the i3 first, because I tried the Golf, I tried the Leaf as well, and the i3, and I'll tell you why I chose the i3 and what I've learned so far in terms of what I like about it. So I went for the i3, and I'm not going to beat around the bush over here. Is that I'm a BMW fan. My last car was a BMW 330i. I like BMW. I like the responsiveness, and I like the way they drive. So I was already a little bit biased towards BMW anyway. But however, this is EV. So, and I think I mentioned this to you before, last time when we were in Berlin, Zach, is that when it comes to EV, there's almost a level playing field, because it's almost like a new technology. So these guys literally I had to forget the badge, and just think, what is the best EV car for me? And the reason why I went for the i3 is because of the looks. Believe it or not, I didn't like the look, but until when I actually saw the car in the flesh, and I thought, wow, that car looks really nice in the 20-inch rims. I eventually went for the 19-inch rims because obviously because of the the ride feel is a little bit more harsh on the 20-inch rims. But once you put the rims on there, it looks fantastic. The interior is well made. The fit and finish is the quality that I expect of a car, of a BMW. And that's why I went for the BMW instead of the Nissan Leaf, for example. But one other reason, and this might be a little bit again, a little bit controversial, is I went for the BMW I think because of the Rex engine. So I have a Rex engine, and as you know, I'm an EV advocate. So I go to places to give speeches, and I need that backup in case. It's not the car's fault. Don't get me wrong. It's not the car's fault. It's the infrastructure is not ready yet, and you always need that Rex just in case. And because it has that insurance policy, that just sold it for me. I hardly ever use the Rex, but I know that if I need to run down quickly to Bristol or Oxford, if God forbid a station wasn't working, I've got the Rex, and the i3 gives me that. And
I want to highlight
yeah.
two things you've said on this call that I think just should be blasted with a megaphone, because they're so counter to what you hear over and over, people complaining about the i3 4s. First of all, earlier you said everyone loves the car. Like
Yes.
everyone loves it. Everyone thinks it's beautiful, it's amazing. And it's something, there's so much, there's certain models and certain things on the internet just develop this kind of echo chamber, and then every time it comes up you hear the same things over and over. But the i3, and then what you said, you didn't like it how it looked initially, and then in person it's stunning. And I think this is really I guess an unfortunate thing, or fortunate depending on how you look at it, with the i3, is I think it's a really looks like a great vehicle in person, and it's hard to capture that in pictures. Just like it's hard to capture in pictures the navigation of a Model S. You never capture how big and dramatic that effect is until you see it in person. And I think the i3 too, it's when you see it in person, all of a sudden it doesn't look like a small, boxy, weird car. It looks like, wow, that's a beautiful BMW. What's going on there?
Yeah. Absolutely. And most of the people that actually give me a compliment are the millennials. They love it because for them it's is unique. It stands out. It doesn't look like any other thing on the road. And most of the, and the most important thing is the usability of it as well. And those doors that initially I thought was was going to be a bit of a disadvantage, people love it, especially when when I actually use it. It really grabs attention. It's not up to the scale of a Model X, of course, we know that, the Falcon Wing does, but that is its own little party piece. And once you open it, doors are wow, nice car. And getting in the back without those doors.
Yeah, I almost said earlier that I really like these. I like these doors for a few reasons, but I won't talk about them. But it's one of those things again where people start criticizing it, and everyone, and it's like this common assumption is, oh, the doors suck. But in real life, like you say, when it's not someone who follows cars for a living on the internet or in all their free time on the internet, a lot of people like this effect. But the driving, so the city driving too. I mean, you were drawn to it for this for the sporty acceleration, the sporty handling, and
sporty acceleration, the sporty feel, the handling, the look and feel of the car, and again, the steering wheel.
Yeah, I know.
Not underestimate how good is how important having a responsive steering wheel is. The size of it is just perfect. The look of it is perfect. The buttons are well placed. It feels quality. You have to touch these things. So it just feels quality.
Jose and Kyle, you haven't talked about the steering. What do you are you in love with it like Afeez and I, where it's just like this is the best steering wheel on the planet, or is it or you don't like it?
I think it works well. I'm just eager for the future where we don't need to use them, so I'm really not considering that a key feature. But I do, from my time with it, I felt like it wasn't just the physical wheel itself, right? It's the like if you said, it's the responsiveness of it, and that's where it really gets into the BMW kind of feel, right? It's meant to be a driven car, and it feels like it kind of calls to you to drive it, and when you do, it just shows how refined it is. I was almost unable to get the tires to chirp on that, And I drive pretty aggressively when I'm putting the cars through their paces because I think it's a safety thing. When
You drive aggressively in general, Kyle, not just to test them.
let's talk about who got the speeding ticket. I guess we
Okay,
can go into that later. But yeah, I mean, I think the car and the handling of it and the steering wheel, it's a great kind of front end for that. And yeah, it has a great feel to it for sure.
Yeah, not about the steering wheel, but the responsiveness, like Kyle said, for me, it's one of the plus points of the BMW i3. I think regarding the responsiveness of the car, there's probably no car beating it in town.
And you know, he brought up the Rex, and I know Jose and I had the same. We had the same sort of story with the Rex. We found out later recently. So initially, you know, as pure electric fans, we thought, oh, the Rex is stupid. It's like little. We would never get the Rex. We would get the fully electric. I think Jose was seriously considering the car. I was planning to. You know, it was a top option if I moved to Florida, but at that point, as I was looking at the car as a real purchase, I realized, I would get the Rex because it would extend my travel range in certain regions significantly. It would let me get to North Carolina, whereas I couldn't otherwise. It would from Florida. It adds that security where, okay, sure, you feel comfortable. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to handle it. But at the same time, well, it would be nice to have a little security in case I ran into a problem, right? So I think the Rex is brilliant, even though it gets criticized by people like me when they're not thinking through. I don't know if I ever criticized it early on, but I thought it was sort of lame until I thought about getting a BMW i3. But
And actually, if you think about it, you actually do more miles on electric because you have the Rex. Because you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to have a 150-mile trip. Maybe I'm not using the i3 because it might not get there. But if you have the range extender, you have always a safety net. So even if it doesn't get 150 miles, even if it gets only 120, you have the 30 that you do with the range extender. So you actually do more miles on electric because you are not limited than if you were only pure electric.
that's a great point. And a study has found that Chevy Volt and Nissan Leaf drivers get about the same electric miles every year, even though the Volt has a lot less electric range because they don't have this, exactly what you said. So I think, again, i3 too, as someone drawn to a fully electric car, the i3 offered that, but also this, you know, this stopgap measure of, okay, it's not 250 miles with supercharger network, but at least it has a Rex. And that was like, it's maybe not perfect, but it's a really big stepping stone feature of the i3, I think. But
yeah, and I think obviously I've spoken to quite a lot of BMW owners here in London, and that is one of the key enablers for them to actually get the car. You know, initially, as you know, EV advocates, we frown against anything that emits CO2 emission. Oh, we don't want that. It has to be pure EV. You're selling your soul to the devil, blah blah blah. But ultimately, we need to be very clear. As obviously, as a website like CleanTechnica, as an EV advocate like myself, obviously, and Carl and Jose, our main priority is to accelerate the adoption of electric cars and e-mobility, and anything that enables that, we should try to promote it. The CO2 emission of my Rex is 13 grams per kilometer. That is quite low. It's very low, and I hardly ever use it. But it's more of a mental barrier for some people because they're always scared that, oh wow, what if I run out of charge in the middle of nowhere? And what the Rex gives you is it allows the i3 to be a car that takes two energy sources. You've got electricity and you also have the backup as in the generator. And it doesn't even drive the wheel, it's just a generator. So it's not even a hybrid. In some cases on the internet, I've seen the i3 being classified as a hybrid, and that's wrong. Again, that's so there's so much misinformation out there. And I just like to get it out there to our viewers and and people on the call to say that the Rex shouldn't be frowned upon. Really, I think it's a great enabler.
And so I think that we're a bit late, but let's jump into the i3 versus Model 3. What, of course the market is there's gonna be a lot more people buying the Model 3. But there's still going to be a significant market of people, I think, who are considering the i3 or the Model 3. Maybe we should start with a couple base assumptions. Is the i3 price needs to drop, needs to be more comparable to Model 3 price. BMW, you would think, is about to boost the range again. It was sort of going lockstep with Nissan, where it would boost the range a bit year over year, but Nissan's looking to have a big boost. I don't know. I don't think BMW is going to give a huge boost, but it needs to at least boost it a bit to get more like where if you got the Rex, you would really hardly ever use the Rex, if ever. But aside from those things, what do you see from just a pure like consumer angle, or from the overall broader market angle? What do you see between these two models?
I think that the i3, besides needing to have a price cut, also BMW has to realize that there's a new kid in town called Tesla, and he's the new cool boy. So that thinking that, oh, there's the three Marys and no one is above us, which is Audi, BMW, and Mercedes, that's old-time story now. Every time people talk about electric cars, they always say, oh, Tesla is so great because it has autonomous drive, etc., etc., etc. But then when we talk about the other electric cars, including BMW i3, yeah, they're okay. So BMW has to realize that they can't fight directly with the Tesla Model 3 with the BMW i3. So besides pricing it below, it needs to address a different target. If the Model 3 is for long-term journeys, for regular people that do 200 miles every so often, the BMW i3 should be targeted to urban city dweller, urban people that run around the city, that don't need a lot of range, but need a small, cool car. And that's a different demographic than Tesla.
Right. Yeah, I think we talk a lot about how the vast majority, like 95% plus of driving, can be handled with the EVs that are out today. And I think that's very true. But what Tesla has done is really to say that those restrictions, those constraints are not an issue. And I think that's what's attractive to consumers, is that they see the supercharging network, the autonomous driving, the seamless integration of the navigation with charging built in to the logic, the intuitive user interface, and the high range. And they see a car that's better fundamentally on just about every level than what they're driving today, whether it's internal combustion, electric, hybrid, or anything. And so I think Tesla has really leveled up automotive, and it just happens to be electric. And that's fantastic, because that creates the draw. Afeez, like you were saying, we want people to drive electric. That's the ultimate goal. It's not about infighting. It's about attracting people to electric driving and to realizing that it can be better, and it is better today, 2017, on just about every level, if not every level. And so I think comparing these two, if I were a city dweller like Afeez, I would almost certainly go with the i3 because of the size. And the range is not a limitation. The charging is not a limitation. You're not going to be driving autonomously. You don't need that necessarily. And navigation isn't really an issue, because generally you know the city. But in larger environments, I'll take Los Angeles because that's where I'm based. People drive a lot. That's just the way things work today. And until we get a mass transit system that's functional, or maybe as functional as we have in Europe, and people are driving all over the place to go to the new boba shop or to try this new pho restaurant across town or whatever, navigation is important. And I think in that situation, autonomous driving is something that will really help and really be a big draw, because people don't like being stuck in traffic. And it's not traffic. It's and I leaned into this in an article I wrote about Harman, but it's when you can not worry about the traffic almost goes away. And so when you can put it in autonomous driving mode, and just kind of forget about it and read a book or listen to your music and enjoy the experience, that's a huge benefit to people. So I think if I were in Southern California, I am. Tesla is my preferred brand, but if I was in a city, I think the i3 delivers the vast majority of what I would be looking for, if not all of it. Better than Tesla even.
Okay, so for me, I mean, if I had a BMW CEO in front of me right now, if I was put in the position to say, okay, this is the BMW CEO, what advice can I give to you to make sure that Tesla doesn't come and take your lunch money? I think for me, the navigation is to improve. Definitely. I think BMW needs to step out of the good old days and understand that integration is key. Usability is key. Software is key. I have no doubt that BMW can make great cars because they've proven it over and over again. The i3 is a great car, as in a great driver's car. But I think why I prefer Tesla sometimes is their integration, the way the car presents information to you. It's connected to the internet 24/7. In terms of the customer service as well of Tesla, that should not be underestimated. The way Tesla interacts and leverages its users' experience to promote itself. Tesla hardly ever spends anything on advertising this brand, but somehow people love it. Why do people love that? It's because they have people like Elon Musk, for example. And I think BMW needs to stop being a faceless organization and really embrace the electrification. And they need someone to come out of the company and say, we support electric cars. We love our product. Elon is always saying, Tesla, he's putting a lot of his money in there. We don't see that amount of care being given to the BMW i3. And I think that is why people care about Tesla, the brand, first. They care about the brand first than even the car. If I was to choose between the i3
and that's why, that's why so many people put down reservations. So 115,000 put down the reservation before they saw the car. So they didn't even know the car. It was because of the brand.
It's the brand and the mission statement. What is the mission statement? There isn't that, and it's a shame. And I think this webinar, it's a great thing that you've done, Zach, is to really get his message across that the car itself is probably comparable or even in some case better than the Model S, but because BMW i brand is not well known, people do not push that value that the car has. And I think, obviously, the navigation needs to be improved, but the brand and the mission statements needs to be a lot more clear for me, because I am convinced about the car. I drive it every day, and I can tell it's a great car. So I don't need to really tell you guys anything more apart from navigation. But that is one thing I would tell BMW.
Really well, you guys have all brought in good points. I think that's a really big point. People are still anti BMW, or let's let BMW. Because they don't see BMW saying, look, we really care about this. Of course, they have their messages. They have, but there's not this person who every day, 24/7 is pro EV, is out there in the public. They don't have a face behind the i brand who's like, that we're going full speed ahead. We're going faster than we should because we really feel passionate about this. So, they sort of launched with a bit of pizzazz, but let it die off. So I think that's a huge thing. If they had more of that, really, where people had the sense BMW really cares about electrification and they're really going hardcore on it with the i brand, they would have a lot more buyers, I think. But yeah, when I think about it from a consumer angle, because I definitely do, I'm drawn to the i3 for the city life. And Jose, like you said, they have to target another audience. So I think they have to really, aside from getting fully behind it, say, look, we really want to go electric. they should be really hyper focused on selling it as a city car, as selling it as the best car you can have in the city, like over and over, the best car you can have in the city. That should be their message, right? And I think I think even with the Model 3, if you look at these comparisons I did of the Audi and BMW models and such, the Model 3 is still a big car. It's still actually a pretty big car. It's pretty wide. It's fairly long. It's not a Model S, of course, but a Model S is a land boat, so it's still big. So I think the i3 still has that benefit, and it has the visibility benefit, that sporty handling and BMW benefit with the lightness, with the visibility, that it could really sell if it tried. Like Nissan has kept sales up of the Leaf by massive discounts. So I think the i3 still has to, BMW has to approach it like, how do we keep sales up? Cut prices, offer fleet discounts, and heavily market it as the car to buy for this purpose or audience. When I think about it myself, I'm still very drawn to it if the price was a lot lower. If it was significantly lower than a Model 3, it would still be in the running, I think, for me. The supercharging is really hard to you can't underestimate the power of having that supercharger network. The Rex sort of solves the problem, but it's still like you'd rather have a supercharger than have to use the Rex. So it's a significant drop. And then the navigation, again, Kyle's great point. If you're in your city, you don't really need to use navigation much, but still, that, as Afeez was saying, there's that whole experience. And in Europe you have Spotify. It's like, this is the number one feature for a lot of European Tesla owners, Spotify. Yeah. So I think BMW has to put some TLC into that, where they're offering a Spotify or something like this, where they're connecting things internally more in a way that makes people think, wow, this is just a better car, right? So I think with much lower pricing and very hyper-focused attention, it could do well. I don't think anyone expects that its sales are gonna. I think the sales are gonna be hit, because I think most of us expect BMW isn't gonna take these steps. But maybe they'll surprise us. Yeah. Any final thoughts?
Well, I mean, BMW are in a way trying to fight. Try to fight the invasion of the Tesla Model 3 with their version of a 3 Series. I think I read that they're converting a 3 Series into a pure electric. So I believe that is what they're going to be using, to kind of stave off the Tesla Model 3 invasion into their market space, which they've basically been the class leader of for at least 2 decades now. If there's any last thing from me, is that viewers out there, check out the BMW i3. I think it's a fantastic car. I've had it for going on about a year and a half right now. I've driven it in the city. I've driven it outside of the city. I've gone on long trips, short trips. It's never let me down before. The driving experience is great. Probably the best driving experience handling-wise I've had. And again, just to let you guys know that I am pro EV, so I've driven all kind of electric, even hydrogen fuel cell cars. So I know the difference between all these cars. I've driven a Tesla Model S all around Europe, all around the UAE as well. So I know for sure what the advantages of that car or those cars are. But majority of your driving is done within the city. Most people live within the city, and if you need a car or a second car, if you live in a 2-car household, get yourself a BMW i3, and you will not be disappointed. Yeah, so that's it.
Jose, Kyle?
Yeah, I would market the BMW i3 not only as the best city car, but also the best commuter car in the world, because it's probably the only commuter car that would leave you a smile on your face every time you go to your workplace. And that's very hard to achieve,
Yeah, I agree with that. It is very fun to drive.
Kyle's laughing, but Jose should be in BMW marketing, because they have these vague promotional things. But I mean, just best city car, best community car. Just hammer that home over and over, and people start to consider it or give it a lot more thought.
Yeah.
It really is, though. I think it's a very attractive car, very impressive and very fun to drive. And I think the other piece that we didn't dig into as much, I think Afeez mentioned it a little bit, is the the luxury of the car, the build quality, even comparing the i3, which is priced significantly lower than the Tesla Model S and X, it does have a build quality that's a lot higher, in my opinion, than those two Tesla vehicles, which are in a different class completely. So I think it is definitely worth considering. It's a very fun car to drive. And I think really these things we're talking about with navigation, autonomous driving, charging, and even the user interface, those can be fixed relatively easily. Those are very surface issues. The core of the car is very sound. So I'd say don't get caught up in the clutter and the discussion around these smaller points. The vast majority of the features and function of the car is very, very sound. It's a fantastic car. It's a lot of fun to drive, and on top of all of that frosting, I'll just mention that this is not sponsored because we are a lot of good feelings out there. But I mean, this is just where we're at. I mean, we love the car, and it's a fantastic vehicle to drive. So highly encourage people to go out and try it.
Yeah, my last two things on I think for anyone who can't get a new one at a great discount, recognize that the used market is insane. So you can get insanely low prices on the i3 on the used market, and that's I wouldn't discount that. This is a high quality car with high quality Samsung batteries that are supposed to last ages, and you can just get it ridiculous discounts on a used i3. And personally, that's in my. I planned one day somehow or another have an i3. I think I would just wait for it. I mean, if I needed a car right now, I would get a used i3 probably. But if I, in a few years when we've got maybe a couple of Model 3s in our fleet, a Model S in our fleet, I think I would still look to get a cheap used i3 as my city driver, because I think it's just so much fun to drive. But yeah, that's obviously we're all into the car. We definitely, like we said twice, this is not sponsored in any way. BMW doesn't even know about it, I don't think. But I think you have to give the car a shot and try it a bit before. Maybe if you're not gonna, you don't need to if you're not gonna buy it. But if you're commenting on the i3, please stop and pause until you've actually driven one for a bit, because it's really not worth. It's not something you can explain without trying. Anyway, thank you. We had over 1,000 people watching on Facebook and elsewhere. So sure, a lot more will watch after the fact. And Kyle did a long review the other day, but he's got an epic 5,000+ word review coming. It's going to be huge. So we're going to embed this discussion in there to add a little more to it. But thanks everyone for coming. Thanks to Jose and Afeez and Kyle for making this part of your Sunday. Cheers.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.